I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to episode 100 of It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club.
Woohoo!
We made it to 100. We don't look at a day over 90. On today's episode, we have an interview with Vicki Delany.
Vicki is one of Canada's most prolific and varied crime writers and a national bestseller in the U.S. She has written more than 30 books, clever cozies to Gothic thrillers to gritty police procedurals to historical fiction and novellas for adult literacy. She is currently writing 3 cozy mystery series, the Sherlock Holmes Bookshop series for Crooked Lane, the year-round Christmas mysteries for Penguin Random House as Eva Gates, the Lighthouse Library series for Crooked Lane Books. Vicki lives and writes in bucolic Prince Edward County, Ontario. She is the past president of the Crime Writers of Canada. Her work has been nominated for the Derringer, the Bonnie Blythe, the Ontario Library Association Golden Oak, and the Arthur Ellis Award.
Vicki has several books coming out, but we're mainly talking about There's a Murder Afoot, which is the 5th in her Sherlock Holmes Bookshop mystery. The 6th of January is Sherlock Holmes' birthday, and lucky for Gemma Doyle, January is also the slowest time of the year at both the Sherlock Holmes Bookshop and Emporium and Mrs. Hudson's Tea Room. It's a good time for Gemma and her friends to travel to England for a Holmes convention. For Gemma, the trip provides an opportunity to visit her parents. Jane Wilson is excited about seeing all the sights London has to offer, and Ryan Ashburton just wants to spend time with Gemma. But the trip is immediately derailed when Gemma's father, Henry, recognizes his brother-in-law, Randolph Manning, who disappeared more than 30 years ago on the night he stole a valuable painting from his own parents.
We would like to introduce the prolific author, Vicki Delany. Welcome, Vicki.
Well, thank you so much for having me, ladies. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you.
You're a very busy writer. Besides the 2 books you have out in January, you are introducing a new series, Tea by the Sea, and continuing the year-round Christmas series with 2 more books coming out later this year. What is your secret for such prolific writing?
I'll also mention that I am also continuing the Sherlock Holmes Bookshop series and the Lighthouse Library series that I write under the pen name of Eva Gates. In fact, I have 4 novel series going now. The second one that came out this month that you mentioned is actually a novella, a high-low novella called Coral Reef Views, and those I'm not going to be writing anymore, but all the other projects are ongoing. So anyway, back to the question, if I may. The question was, how do I manage to be so prolific? And to a certain extent, mess that all the time. I'll have 4 novels this year, plus 1 novella, so that's 5 books. And the answer, I kind of don't really even know, because it's just sort of the way that I am. It's just the way that I've always written. But if there's one thing, I think it's because I do write every day when I'm at home. I consider myself to be a pretty undisciplined person. So when it comes to my writing, I have to be quite disciplined. Otherwise, nothing would ever get done. So I follow a pretty strict schedule. And as I said, I write every single day of the week when I'm at home. I travel a lot, and I don't usually write at all when I'm away. But it's that every day. I usually start about 9 o'clock in the morning, go till 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And it's that routine that keeps me focused and keeps me working. Otherwise, there's always so much else that you can do, right? There's always other distractions and other things that could be done. So if I want to get anything done, I find I have to absolutely absolutely regulate myself towards doing it.
Well, your series take place all over the map. Cape Cod, New York, the Caribbean, the Yukon. What inspires you to place your series in a particular locale?
Generally speaking, earlier in my career, I just placed my books in places that I like. The Constable Molly Smith series, my procedural series, is set in the small town of Nelson, British Columbia, which is where my daughter lives. I lived there for a year, and I really, really like it there. I still go back a lot. And that's when I was working in downtown Toronto when I was writing those books. So I just sort of wanted to set my books someplace that I like to be, even if metaphorically speaking. Now that I'm writing cozy mysteries for a more cozy audience, the main impetus, in fact, for where those series are set, on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where the Lighthouse Library books are set, both the Tea by the Sea mysteries and the Sherlock Holmes Bookshop mysteries are set on Cape Cod. Those are places that I like to visit. Why not go someplace to do research where you want to go in the first place? So I like to go there. I've enjoyed my research trips there. But another thing that's nice, I think, is for the sort of cozy books that I'm writing now, is people like to read books that are set in vacation destinations. They go someplace for a beach holiday. They often enjoy picking up a book that's set nearby. So I feel that they have a little bit of a built-in audience right there, setting them in a tourist destination.
And you get to go on all these neat research trips.
Go to all these wonderful places. The latest Sherlock Holmes Bookshop mystery, which just came out in January, called There's a Murder Afoot, actually takes place in London, England. And in that book, the characters all go to a Sherlock Holmes convention in London. I used a vacation I went to with one of my daughters. We went and stayed in London, and I used that a lot. All of the places that they go to in the book are a lot of places they go into places where we stay, like the hotel we stayed at, and restaurants we ate at, things we saw. So that was just an awful lot of fun, and it added, I think, a whole new dimension to the book when you're putting in places that I've really enjoyed seeing, so that I can hopefully make the reader see them in their mind as well.
I have to say, I'm reading your newest book, and I'm impressed of all the little idiosyncrasies that are different about life in London or England, and how English in London might be different from England in Canada or America. I really like those peculiarities you brought out there.
Good, because that's sort of what we're aiming at, right? A little bit of interest as well. I do that with every book because you like your characters to be back at home and back in their community. But every once in a while, it is nice to shake things up a little bit and get the characters out of their comfort zone, too.
Exactly.
Well, if you weren't writing mystery stories, is there another genre you might be interested in tackling?
It's actually hard for me to say. I don't know. I tried my hand early in my career at romance, which certainly didn't work out. Tried my hand at fantasy, and that didn't work out very well at all. I don't think I even got finished my fantasy novel because I kind of got bored with it. I'm writing cozy mysteries now, and I really like writing cozy mysteries. But if I was to change, I think I'd enjoy writing domestic suspense, the sort of psychological suspense.
Ooh. That sounds good.
My first two books published were psychological suspense standalones, published by Poison Pen Press, Scare the Light Away and Burden of Memory. That's the kind of books I really enjoy reading those, so I think I'd try my hand at those if I had the time, which I do not.
Yeah, you got a little bit going on.
Kind of.
Some of the best crime writers like Margaret Atwood and Alan Bradley are from Canada. Why do you think Canada produces so many excellent writers?
I don't know. That's an interesting question because we don't get anything much in the way of government support. Some people think that Canadians do, but we actually don't. It's a hard question to answer. There is some. Yeah, there's a Canada Council which does support some beginning writers. But one of the things that I'm going to point out in answer to your question is, in fact, Canadian crime writers in particular can't get anywhere by setting their books in Canada. And the obvious exception that proves the rule is Louise Penny, who's done enormously successfully with her in Quebec. But I bet offhand your listeners can't think of another Canadian set mystery book that's done really well. My books are all set in the U.S. because that's what the publishers want. I'm the former president of the Crime Writers of Canada, and it's something that we've talked about a lot and we've dealt with a lot, and that there really just isn't a market for Canadian set books. The way, for example, Americans seem to love, Canadians love them too, the sort of Nordic noir.
Oh, yes.
Or Sweden or all that, but nobody wants to read a book set in Canada. And we don't understand why, but that's just the way it is. So it is kind of discouraging. There are plenty of people writing Canadian stories, and they're published by Canadian publishers, but not getting a whole lot of international recognition. You mentioned Alan Bradley. His books are set in the UK.
Well, he did take the series to Canada for a while for
One of the books,
for her boarding school.
which wasn't a very good experience for her.
Can you give us some background on the Women Killing It Writers Festival?
I'm absolutely delighted to be able to do that. So Women Killing It is a festival that I started with my friend Janet Kello, who's actually a historical writer. She's written a historical mystery series set in Canada in the mid-1800s. She lives nearby, and we were just sort of talking one day about how it does seem in Canada that Canadian women crime writers don't get invited to literary festivals. The big literary festivals invite plenty of international women crime writers and plenty of male Canadian crime writers. And this is something that I observed over a while, to be a dearth of Canadian women crime writers getting invited to festivals. We sort of, actually more Janet than me. I'm the sort that sits and complains, and Janet's the sort of person that actually decided to do something about it. And she said, well, why don't we start our own festival? Which we did. We've had our third year. We're really pleased with it. We get some pretty good names. Joy Fielding was a guest last year. We've had Susanna Kearsley, Maureen Jennings, Gail Bowen. We've had some big name Canadian crime writers, and we've had some newbies with their quite proud of it. It's held Labor Day weekend in Prince Edward County, Ontario. If any of your listeners would like to come, Women Killing It is the name. They could certainly drop me an email to ask for more information. Our tickets will be going up for sale in the next couple of weeks, and we're just really proud of it. We have 8 crime writers as our featured guests every year, 3 major events, 2 workshops, plenty of chance to meet and greet. It's low-key, it's casual, and it's in one of Ontario's top tourist destinations. So what else could you possibly want?
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
And consider yourselves invited as well.
We would love that.
You are a master of character development, and I feel like I know these characters as I read them. How much research goes into each of your books to create these characters?
I don't do much research in characters at all. They're just kind of the way that I guess I think that people would be. Most of my research is location. Like I have been to the Outer Banks, I've been to Cape Cod to try and just get a feel for the place. The characters are pretty just sort of organic. They kind of grow in my mind. For example, Gemma Doyle in the Sherlock Holmes Bookshop series. When I first decided to write that series, my intention had been just about a girl who owns a funny, quirky little bookstore, and I had not planned on making her the Sherlock Holmes character, but almost right away she did. She turned into it. Basically, she became my version of Sherlock Holmes. So that's sort of what I mean by organic. That's as if that's kind of what she wanted to be like, and it's turned out to be actually a lot of fun. I think it's been added a heck of a lot to the series to have her like. And then because Gemma became Sherlock, then her best friend Jane Wilson became the John Watson character. And so it all sort of...
Well, speaking of characters, we hear a lot of times that writers model some of the characters after themselves. Which character is more closer to your personality? Gemma, Fiona, Molly, Mary, or Ray?
None of the above. Absolutely none of the above. They're not like me in any way. The only character I can think of that's even remotely like me is Lily Roberts from the new Tea by the Sea mysteries, which you will not have read yet because the first one, which is called Tea and Treachery, comes out in July. And she's the most reluctant of reluctant sleuths. She wants to work in her tea room and make scones and macarons and nice sandwiches and serve tea, but her grandmother and her best friend Bernadette keep dragging her into helping them solve the mystery. So I consider her to be more like me. She just wants to be left alone. They won't let her be left alone, right? She has to, so of course she gets involved in it all and fight against her will.
As you write, do you become the character, or are you in control of how that storyline develops?
Oh, I think I'm pretty much in control. I did mention how Gemma changed very quickly. Not because I became her, because in fact the last thing I've someone with a mind like Sherlock Holmes. I'm pretty much the director. Like in a play, I'm the one who's standing there telling them where to. The characters don't change so much. The plots can certainly diverge from what I have thought of. So I guess in some ways the characters do act sometimes in unexpected ways, but that's usually just a matter of getting the plot to where it needs to go.
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm pretty much a plotter. I always was a pantser. I wrote one of my Constable Molly Smith books straight through. I had the opening scene in my mind, and then I wrote it straight through with no idea whatsoever of what was going to happen, and I don't think I particularly liked that experience. a heck of a lot of going back and fixing things up. But I always was a pantser. But when I got writing for published out like Kensington, Crooked Lane, and Penguin Random House, they want an outline, prove the contract. And I found that I liked writing an outline. Once I had to do it, I found I really liked it. To me, that's the hard part. So we get the hard part done early and get it over with. Generally speaking, the publishers don't expect you to stick to the outline. They're not going to throw your book away because you didn't get better because you didn't stick to the outline. I find I stick pretty closely to the outline I'm doing, and it works really well for me now. So that's what I do now.
Of course, we've talked about all the new books you have coming out this year. What kind of events do you have going on that our listeners need to know about?
I'm going to be at Malice Domestic in Bethesda at the beginning of May. I go to Malice